Let me ask you something. When someone asks you what your childhood was like, what happens in that split second before you answer? For a lot of people, there's this pause, this weird little hesitation. Not because the memories are gone, not because nothing happened, but because somewhere in there, something shifted, and you can't quite put your finger on when exactly you stopped being a kid. And here's the strange part. Most people don't even realize that moment exists. That moment, that shift, is what we're unpacking today. Because there's a version of losing your childhood that nobody really talks about. It doesn't look like a movie. There's no dramatic scene, no single turning point. It looks more like this. You're 10 years old and you already know which version of your parent is walking through the door before they even say a word. You know by the sound of footsteps, the way keys hit the counter, the heaviness in the air. You've become fluent in a language you never chose to learn. Or maybe it's younger than that. Maybe you were the one who kept the household running, kept your siblings calm, kept the peace, quietly, without anyone asking, because nobody had to ask. You just knew. Psychologists have a term for this, parentification. It's when a child absorbs responsibilities that were never meant to be theirs. But I want you to really sit with that word, because that clinical definition barely scratches the surface of what it actually feels like to be that kid. Here's what nobody tells you. That child doesn't disappear when you become an adult. They just go underground. And from down there, they keep making decisions for you, quietly, automatically, without you even realizing it. And that's why this isn't really about childhood. It's about how it still shapes you now. Dr. Lisa Hooper, a psychologist who has spent years researching parentification, found something that I think is really important. These children often look incredibly mature, composed, capable beyond their years. But it's not emotional maturity in the healthy sense. It's adaptation. It's a nervous system that learned to treat chaos as the baseline, that rewired itself around survival, not growth. Survival keeps you alive, but it doesn't let you live. Now, let's be honest, because it's not all dark. Children who grew up too fast often become extraordinary at certain things. Reading people, genuinely, almost eerily good at knowing what someone needs before they've said it out loud. Managing tension, walking into a room and immediately sensing what's off, what needs to be smoothed over, what needs to stay unspoken. Problem solving becomes instinct. Emotional labor becomes second nature. And the world, honestly, rewards this. We build careers out of it. We become the person everyone calls in a crisis, the reliable one, the one who just handles it, the one who never seems to fall apart. And that feels like strength, because it is strength. But here's what we don't ask often enough. What did it cost you to build that strength at age 8? Because those same abilities that kept you functional as a kid, they follow you into adulthood in ways that aren't always helpful. You might find yourself gravitating toward people who need you. And before you label that as something negative, understand that it makes complete sense. Being needed was probably the closest thing to feeling loved that you had access to as a child. So now, love feels most real when it looks like someone depending on you. Here's where it gets complicated. When someone shows up for you consistently, when they're emotionally present and stable and genuinely caring, it might not feel like home. It might feel uncomfortable, like there must be a catch, like something's about to go wrong, because in your experience, this much stability wasn't real. Inconsistency, on the other hand, that feels familiar. That feels like something you know how to navigate. And then there's the control piece. Not control in the aggressive or manipulative sense, more like this deep, almost physical need to manage your environment, to plan, to anticipate every possible outcome before it happens, to run every scenario in your head before making a decision that other people would make without a second thought. People might call it being detail-oriented, or a worrier, or a perfectionist. But what they're actually seeing is someone whose nervous system learned that being caught off guard had real consequences. So your body learned to stay ready, even when nothing's wrong. When you live like that, it leads to a very specific kind of exhaustion. Because this isn't the kind of tired that goes away after a good night's sleep. This is something that sits in your bones. This is what happens when your system has been running at full capacity since you were in grade school. when you never really got to experience rest as something safe, because resting meant things might fall apart. So even now, when things are objectively fine, there's probably a part of you that can't fully relax, that monitors, that stays just a little bit ready. That's not anxiety for no reason. That's a very old protective instinct that hasn't gotten the message yet that the emergency is over. Beyond that, there is a layer of invisible work you're likely doing every day. You are probably very good at making sure everyone else in a room feels okay. You track moods, you adjust your energy, you soften the edges of situations without anyone even noticing you did it. And you've been doing this so long that you might not even recognize it as work anymore. But it is work, and it is exhausting. And you might be doing it constantly, even with people who genuinely love you and would never need you to. The loneliest part? You can be surrounded by people who care about you and still feel like nobody really sees what it takes for you to keep things running smoothly. And saying something feels wrong. Like admitting it would mean you failed at the one thing you've always been good at. And the hardest part? Most people will never know you've been carrying all of that. So where do you go from here? First, I think there has to be some grief. Real, honest grief. For the version of you who had to be responsible before you had any idea what responsibility even meant. For the childhood that got traded in early. For all the things you carried that you never should have had to. Grieving that isn't being dramatic, it's being truthful. Second, and this is the one that might take the longest, you have to start separating your worth from your usefulness. Because somewhere along the way, those two things got fused together. Your value became tied to what you could do, what you could fix, how much you could hold. But you are not a function, you are a person, and being is enough. Even when you're not producing anything, fixing anything, or holding anything together for anyone. Third, and maybe the most challenging one, you have to practice being taken care of. And I use the word practice deliberately because that's what it is. You're not behind, you're not broken. You're just learning something you never got to learn the first time around. Let people show up for you. Let things be imperfect without immediately trying to manage them. Let yourself need something out loud without apologizing for it. That kid who ran everything and held everyone together, they did something genuinely remarkable. They survived something hard with almost nothing to work with. But they don't have to keep running the whole show. It's safe to put some of it down. It's safe to let someone else carry it for a while. And if this landed somewhere real for you today, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. These conversations matter, and so do you. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.